Hi friends, welcome to CodeNet, and today we want to understand on how we can actually output something, the content that is inside the code or the statement of JavaScript inside an HTML document. So you can tell that I am of course in an HTML document because it is titled firstjs.html. The extension is HTML. So meaning I will implement an internal JavaScript for I to now denote the actual printing out of things that are inside the JavaScript as the statements of JavaScript inside the HTML document. So for we to implement JavaScript, the actual code of JavaScript, we need to denote the element of HTML which will allow us to work with JavaScript as the codes and statements of JavaScript, since we are doing it inside an HTML document. So for we to implement that, don't forget an element of HTML should have the starting tag and an ending tag, and the actual element is called script. Immediately when we close by providing the greater than sign, the IDE will even provide the closing tag because it also understands that an element of HTML should have a starting tag and an ending tag. So since we've denoted, of course we've provided the element of HTML, then the code for JavaScript needs to be implemented in between the starting and the ending tag. Now the very first method, which is the one of the two methods that we will learn, is the method of printing out, which is called innerHTML. innerHTML. To implement innerHTML, we should follow the syntax document dot get element by ID. We even specify the parentheses. So what we are saying is, okay, I want to implement an innerHTML as a way that I can implement in JavaScript when I want to print out something on the HTML web page. So how will this be done? So I am saying innerHTML and I am saying get element by ID because I understand that innerHTML works in conjunction with the elements of HTML. innerHTML, the way it works with the elements of HTML is like the way the lock and a key actually works for the door. So this is what this actual code stands for. We are saying, okay, I am of course using document dot, and this is where we need now to understand, okay, document dot, this is the actual syntax. I want to get the element by its respective ID. So if I have an element, for example, I can create of course an element like this element. I can create another element. I can say, okay, H3, or should I say, okay, H3. I even close. Okay, this is H3 and this actual element is empty. I have not provided anything on H3. So I can say, yeah, I am saying, okay, I've created an element with H3, but the content that I want to be in between this element is actually the content that I will specify inside the JavaScript code which I will implement. So here I'm working on the JavaScript code now. So we are saying, okay, display the content on the element, the respective element, which is H3. Now how will we know that yes, we want to display that content on H3? It's by ID. Hence we are saying get the element by ID. So the actual element where we need to display the content should have an ID. An ID is simply more like a key, something that will allow us to specify uniquely the actual element where the code needs to be displayed. So I will say, okay, the ID for this element, to specify the ID, you just say the actual ID as a name, I mean I and a D, then an equal sign, and then automatically my IDE has provided definitely the double quotes and the cursor is blinking in between. Specify now the actual name for the ID, the actual password, the actual, I mean key that will be used inside the parentheses of definitely the JavaScript for you to send the content that you want to display on the actual element, which is H3. So I will say, okay, what ID is this? I will just say ID underscore number 4. So meaning even in between the parentheses, I need to specify the actual ID. Take note that here the ID is in between the double quotes. Hence also here the ID needs to be in between the double quotes, and then I will say okay, ID underscore number 4. So I've said okay, I want to print out something on the element with the ID number 4. This is what this actual code or method actually means. This is the actual syntax that we need to follow when we want to print out using innerHTML. So now, what is the content that we will print out? Now, what is the thing that we will send in between the element, which is h3? The content that we want to send to that as an element needs to be denoted by the actual keyword, I mean a full stop, which is the thing which will connect the get element by ID with the content that we need to print out. And then the content that I want to print out should be sent on the element which is h3 because it has the ID underscore 4 using the property which is called inner HTML and then an equal sign, and then of course we can just print out some mathematics. We can just say okay, 56 plus 2, and then we terminate with a semicolon. Immediately we control S if your document is not on autosave. Of course, immediately we go on our browser. You can tell that this is the raw file that we have. When we refresh, we'll see that 58 has been printed out. Here we have 58. So meaning, yeah, the actual work that we were working on has definitely been implemented. 56 plus 2, I mean that's definitely a 58. If we want to print out now text, let's say if we want to print out hi, how are you, then the content that needs to be printed out, since it's text, should be in between the double quotes, and then we'll say hi, how are you. Immediately we do that, Ctrl S to save. Let's go back on our browser, which is definitely the actual browser I'm using. Immediately I refresh, we'll see hi, how are you. So meaning we've implemented or we've printed out, we've sent the output on the HTML page using what is called innerHTML. Let me explain and summarize the innerHTML as we implement the next method that we can use. So we are saying okay, to implement innerHTML, all we need to understand is innerHTML works in conjunction with elements of HTML. And for we to send something, we need to understand the actual code, which is, of course, we can say a method which is document.getElement by ID, and then the actual ID should be in between the parentheses with, of course, the double quotes on the sides, on the left hand side, and of course on the right hand side, and then the ID in between. The respective ID should be the ID that needs to be specified on the actual element where we want to display the content that will be sent on that element using innerHTML, and then of course an assignment operator or an equal sign, hi, how are you. So is there another method that can be used when we want to display some content on our browser using JavaScript? Yes, definitely. There are about 4 methods, but as we will discuss only 2 because the other methods, I mean, they are just meant for testing purposes and anything related to that, but we can also use these methods if we want to test. So knowing these as basics, then yeah, we are set and ready to go with JavaScript. So another method and the last method that we'll discuss is simply the window.alert as the method that we can use when we want to display JavaScript code or content inside the statements of JavaScript on our window. Now we are saying window.alert as another method. I mean, that is even the actual code that needs to be implemented. Now you can start having question, hey, what's window alert as the actual display, another display method that can be used? What's that? So in definition, we can define window.alert as simply something that instructs the browser to display a dialog with an optional message and to wait until the user dismisses the actual dialog. So what we are saying is okay, there are some dialogues even when you are browsing. I mean, there are some alert boxes that you see on the browser. So the actual alert as the boxes you will see, because we even implement practically what we call window.alert as another method or another display method that JavaScript uses. So we are saying, okay, window.alert, okay, can we, if we implement using this, definitely print out something? Whoa, no, we can't print out something, because for now we understand that JavaScript needs to be in between the element which we call, of course, the element which we call script as an element of HTML, the opening and the starting tag, and then we can of course implement window.alert. Now the content that we want to print out should be in between the parentheses of the actual statement, the parentheses of the actual function which will now provide the dialog that we need, which is window.alert. So the content, let's say if we say, okay, I want to display 56 plus 2, I mean, let's leave some space in between for the neatness sake, and then immediately we do that, Ctrl S to save the file. When we go on our browser, definitely this is the actual file that we worked on. We'll see that when we refresh, we'll see a dialog. Okay, this page says 58, and then from the definition of window.alert, we said it will only get dismissed once the user clicks on the option, which is okay. Immediately when we do that, I mean, we'll go back on our web page. If we wanted to print out content which contain words and anything related to that, then words, as usual, since they are string, a sequence of characters, they need to be in between the double quotes. And then here, that's where we can say, I am doing very fine. So immediately when we do that, we can Ctrl S to save the document, and then when we go on our browser, we'll see that the dialog will contain I am doing very fine. I'm sure you've seen such type of content being displayed by the browser. For now, just understand that we can display content using the browser using what is called innerHTML and window.alert. We'll see the very major practical implementation and actual use of these methods as we progress in our sessions. Please, let's progress on our next session as we understand more on JavaScript. Don't forget to subscribe, and you are on CodeNet.